So, hello, George. It's great to have you. So the first question that we have is kind of like out of the blue, but we noticed that there are a lot of great franchisors coming from Utah. So, like Crumble and Dirty Dough and Swig and like Picklr. So, is there something with like Utah-based franchisors? Do you guys have a mafia there?
You know what? That is such a great question because I've actually touched on this topic. I think Utah in general, we see it once in a while in reports on how great the economy is and businesses that are coming out of here. But from technology and software to franchisors, Utah is just very entrepreneur mindset, right? We have Silicon Slopes, which we are getting people by the thousands moving in to work for great companies. And I when I think about franchisors and the Picklr now being one that's coming out of Utah, I also want the state of Utah to be recognized as someone that's helping lead and build the way for franchisors coming out of here. And it's been actually been pretty amazing to see, um, a trend of whether it be food or drinks, and now pickleball. It's been awesome to see people start to develop and help grow the franchisor space in Utah, which has been pretty amazing.
Cool. So is there something culturally where you think franchising and Utah just fits, or it's just a coincidence, or it's just entrepreneurial spirit?
It is just, I think there is something cultural about it. I mean, and again, not to get too into the weeds, but Utah primarily is there's a lot of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they're taught to be entrepreneurs, to be sufficient. And I think that plays a huge role because ever since I was little, it was embedded in my head to entrepreneur, right? It's find your passions, find things you love. And they say work for yourself and you'll never work a day in your life. Oh, I work it every day of my life. Not just kidding. No, but I think there's something in the water where everyone is just, they're looking to figure out. We see so many cool things that are happening out of Utah that it's inspiring. You're easily inspired what other people are doing. I mean, from Crumble to be where they're at now, it's like it's a little cookie shop that started in Logan, Utah, right? Swig drinks. I'm getting pictures from my brother in San Antonio. I'm getting investors flying into Utah saying, I saw a TikTok trend for Swig and we're excited to go drink Swig. And I'm just like, what? It's crazy, right? And so I just think it's embedded in us to be entrepreneurs and it leads to hopefully creating great businesses that people want to replicate. And therefore, here we are with the Picklr.
Before you started Picklr, you were like in different fields, like maybe in the tech. So if you share a little bit about what were you doing before, and then like what happened after, like how did you discover pickleball?
Yeah, so sales has always been in my adult life. It's what I've done. It's what I know. And actually, it was something I was really good at. And so, I've sold anything from protein powder to being an enterprise salesman and servicing large companies, with 5,000 employees. And so my background has always just been in sales from actually a very young age. My first job in high school was Pier One Imports selling candles and throw pillows, decorative pillows. And so I remember those days where it's like, hey, you get paid for an upsell. And I was like, I can get paid to just do a little more. And that's kind of always stuck in my head. And so there's a lot of lessons I learned, leading now a franchisor, being CEO, that I've learned from my sales experience, but also working for very fast-paced, growing software companies. I worked for a company in Utah called Pluralsight. They went through an IPO. I worked for another software company called Team, which at the time we were acquired by WeWork. And, we all know what happened to WeWork, but at the time they were on a rocket ship and, they had their destiny and they could have built it to what they wanted to be. Unfortunately, it didn't get to where it was supposed to, but, it was amazing just to see what could happen just of someone having an idea and a belief and scaling it. And yeah, that's what my background was primarily sales, and then transitioned to use my skill set of sales and understanding software and top of funnel and marketing, and to help small companies, and from being able to how to sales and marketing bridge together, and et cetera, right? So it was my sales days were, I'm still having to be a sales guy. We have to sell what the Picklr is every single day.
So how did you discover pickleball, and like why did you decide, okay, I'm going to, it seems like risky, no? Like how do you decide I'm going to leave tech, the hype is there, to focus on pickleball and franchise?
Yeah. So I don't have a racket sports paddle background. I grew up playing soccer, football, basketball, even though I'm 5'7". Those were the sports I primarily chose to play. So I was always a short guy out there. But in my tech days, we played a lot of ping pong. These tech companies, they provide certain things to make you want to stay in the office longer. And so ping pong naturally was one of the things I gravitated to, because it was very hard to master, and it was fun because you could play 2v2 or you play 1v1, and so we would play during lunchtime. And we were very fortunate here in Utah in 2015. We had pickleball courts where most of the country hadn't even heard of pickleball. We had early adopters in cities that had seen the sport grow in pockets of the country. And we had pickleball courts about 10 minutes from our headquarters. And so instead of playing ping pong on a nice summer day, we'd go play pickleball. And we interpreted it the way that we thought it was meant to be played. We knew what the kitchen was and certain rules and dinking, but there wasn't a lot of pro pickleball. So you just interpreted how you thought it was. And you would get made fun of when you tell people I'm playing pickleball, because if it, it started to get the reputation that it was a sport for old people. And so during the winter times, we would transition into the rec center, and in the rec center for lunch, they would set up 2 to 4 courts. But I would just remember there would be 50 of us that would be waiting in line to get on a court. And I'm just, in my head, I always think I would never do this for anything else. Like, why am I willing to wait for this game of pickleball? And my mindset changed to what pickleball was, and it could be when I saw 2 young kids playing it. The millennials, we were the ones, gravitating to it and starting to play. But I saw these 2 young kids that had a tennis background, and they hit the ball harder than I did. They were faster. They played the game a little bit different. And I was like, there's something going on here that I don't completely understand what it is. And so I fell in love with the sport. 2018, still playing. I was just like, man, these paddles they're ugly. They don't give the representation of what pickleball is. They sounded terrible. The designs were crappy. And back in the day, I was like $90 for a paddle in 2018. It was expensive. I wish we were still paying $90. The paddles are like $300 nowadays, the good ones. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to develop a paddle that's cheaper and looks cool. It attracts the younger generation, and it represents the game of pickleball the way that it should be. And in 2019, I just started selling paddles out of my basement. I was selling about 100 paddles a month, and I decided to take it serious. End of 2019, submitted a pretty big order. And if we remember, in December of 2019 in China, they already had shut down because of COVID. And so I didn't hear from anyone for a very long time, and wondered when I was going to hear from someone. And ultimately, just kept on going through the COVID year. Got laid off from a job after making a successful introductory to an aggregator, and they acquired 51% of the company, and I got laid off. And I was just like, you know what? I'm done working for people. I'm done helping build companies. It's time to take a step towards entrepreneur. I just had my fifth kid, no job. And, I had just had the best year financially of my life. And so I was like, taking a month off, couldn't decide what that is. And I just went back to the rec center days where we weren't a priority for pickleball. We competed with volleyball and basketball. If there's a team coming, we'd have to get kicked off the courts. And I thought there's no one developing or creating facilities just dedicated to pickleball where you can come and do a reservation, a clinic, a tournament. And I looked up popular pickleball terms, and Picklr was someone that's addicted to pickleball. And so I was like, I put the Picklr, so they just became a place where people that are addicted to pickleball can come play. Call my best friend up, started to pitch him the idea. He's like, I'm in. I'm like, let me tell you what it is. Like, don't care, let's do it. So January of 2021, we signed our first lease, no job. The guy, for some reason, didn't check my credit, didn't check finance, nothing. Just let us sign a 15,000 square foot lease. In April, maxed out my credit cards, my life savings, everything, and opened our first facility. And that was the start of getting us on this journey of the Picklr.
You guys raised like earlier this year the 59 million like valuation. So what was the fundraising process like for a lot of like franchisors? It's hard. Like how did you target the investors? Like were they strategic or just regular VCs?
So my mindset when it comes to raising capital, and I think year to date, we're probably closer to 16 million that we've raised for the Picklr. Started with an early friends and family round, which that one was just very lucky to have people in my community that just believe in what we were doing. They bought into the vision early. We had an unproven concept, right? We had which we felt was a good idea. And it was a new category, and not only, no one was franchising in that time, but it was a new category in just pickleball in general, right? No one was doing indoor at the time, and so we had some friends that and family that believed in what we were doing, and we raised a friends and family round, started our Series A, and in that process, I probably had over 100 leads in my inbox on LinkedIn, on Instagram. People were flying from Florida, from Arizona. I mean, you name it. They were flying and saying, what are you doing? We want to know what you're doing. And I used to give free advice to anyone that would call me or come see me and just tell them what we were doing. I'm like, why am I doing this? If I'm thinking it, other people are thinking it. And so we raised the Series A, capped it off early because we went through the franchising process, got an FDD done. I think in record time. I think we did it in 2 weeks, which normally for companies, it could take up to 6 months. And luckily we had been practicing scalability and procedures from day one. And so we were able to go through that process fairly quickly. And, all the money that we've raised has been strategic by people that are either huge believers of the space and have other businesses associated with pickleball, or friends and family. So up to this point, we figure strategic money would go a lot longer, because you're dealing with people that have different distributions or avenues in pickleball, whether it be data or whether it be access to pros or whether it be getting better prices or partnerships. We just decided to go with that route instead before ever talking to private equity or venture capitalists, and they're knocking on the door now, right? I mean, our first year of franchising, the first 18 months, we're at 426 domestic locations sold, not area developer deals, actually sold. We just got Canada done for 68 locations. Australia, New Zealand, Japan are close to being done with master franchisees. And then, it's just scaled faster than we could have ever thought. We have 19 locations open, 30 under construction, and around 68 leases signed.
Why do you think that is? Because many people struggle to sell even their first franchisee. So what is it that is just almost unheard of?
It is unheard of, and quite honestly, I didn't understand that because I didn't have any franchising experience. I think why people were so attracted to us is, I think number one, people buy into people, right? And so I think we had a really amazing founder group that really believed in what we were doing. And along the way, we brought in some people that were in the community that just loved pickleball, that transitioned out of jobs from being social workers or working in finance or whatever it may be, that just joined our team. And then ultimately what we did is we went and hired the best people in franchising, right? I think myself and the other two founders we were quick enough to recognize that we had no idea what we were doing. We'd jump on calls that we'd take from people interested in franchising and immediately recognized that we were over our head, right? And so we hired a chief operation officer who's now our president, that came from a yoga studio concept that got up to 1,000 locations and has 20 plus years of experience in franchising. My chief brand officer and does our partnerships came from F45. Immediately came in and changed the look and feel of what the brand is of the Picklr. It's a lifestyle brand. It's the third space for people to come in and it's their home, it's their work, it's the Picklr, right? The community aspect of what we provide and the human interactions and connections that you can feel on an everyday basis is incredible. My chief growth officer, same thing, Snap Fitness, your European Wax. He had 30 plus years of experience when it came to franchising. And then my CMO, she came from Skull Candy. And so everything that we try to build, I think we built a very strong foundation early on with the team we brought on. And then we invested heavily in people. We have 77 people now at corporate to support the franchisee. And we continue to invest in the foundation of the franchisor being the Picklr. And so I think people early on caught on that not only did we love pickleball, we were pickleball people, but we were willing to invest in the right processes and procedures and foundation of this franchisor, so that when they did join a fast-growing franchisor, yes, do we have the pains of being a new business? Of course, but it is a lot more solid than anybody else coming into the space because of the investment we made in people.
Raising from strategic investors, so it seems like one of them is Chai-Fed's group, so they're backed by a billionaire, and they also own like St. Louis Shock, which is a professional pickleball team. So of course, like building a strong like franchisor foundation is important, but it's also important to be like in a space that's growing, right? So what are your insights on like the growth of pickleball in the coming years or decades, and with like it seems like the final goal being like the Olympic sport?
Yeah. We like to call ourselves the underground kings of pickleball, because people don't realize how involved we are in the pickleball space, right? Strategically. Like I would show up to I went to the first Major League Pickleball event, and we had one facility, and my goal was I am going to get everyone's phone number in this space, and I'm going to tell my story, and we're going to let them know what we're going to do. And it took 3 years for us to finally start to show the world what we're doing. But along the way, we met some amazing people in the space, right? So we own part of a Major League Pickleball now, Major League Pickleball team, which if you guys look up Major League Pickleball and ownership, got guys like LeBron and Tom Brady, a bunch of these guys, KD, a bunch of people that believed in the sport. Gary Vee's team just took second place yesterday. You got people that really believed in the sport, and so we made partnerships with them. Also along the way, Pickleball Inc., they're the largest pickleball entity in the world. They are on our cap table. They're the PPA, they're the tour. We can call Connor Pardo, who's we think is probably the most important person in pickleball, and we can have a conversation with him anytime we want, right? Because he also understands our partnership and that the Picklr is distribution, right? We are distribution from pro shops to amateurs, right? We will have thousands of people come through our facilities, and the hopes are that by the end of the year, we'll have 80, 90, right? And so the Picklr, I think, can be the forefront of growing the game. And we have to be very careful and mindful of how the game is grown, right? We're strategically trying to make sure that along the way we have a seat at the table and we're having conversations on what's most important to the game. So we have great relationships with the PPA when it comes to our youth. Our youth academies are going to continue to grow, and they have access to the junior PPA, and one day they'll have a path to the pros. right? And so ultimately for us, we're solving a couple of issues. Number one, there's still not enough courts in the United States. We are about 25,000 courts short in the US, which is crazy to think. I mean, when you're trying to supply courts for 38 million people, it's a land grab at this point. People are trying to put up courts in a warehouse and hope that people will come. We know that's going to be a lot harder for people to do, right? And so we're trying to grow the game where in a way that we provide a lot of value in our facilities, from the way it looks and feels to what the membership offers. And then number two, we're working closely with partners so that we can get to the Olympics, right? I was in Lima, Peru, just a little bit over a month ago, where 32 teams from across the world participated in a World Cup. And it was the coolest thing I've ever been a part of in my life, because it gave me a little bit of insight of what a young sport can look like in the Olympics. And I can tell you, and I can promise you, if it gets to the Olympics, it will be one of the most attended and watched events, because how passionate people are about pickleball and supporting their countries. You tag that along with the pride of representing your country, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So I'm very excited to see. People only talk about the growth of the United States. It is trending so dang good everywhere else. I mean, you name it, from Australia to Japan to Peru to Mexico. The game is growing internationally, and I think we're going to see a growth of pickleball like we've never seen in 2025 and into 2026.
So like, how important is investing into like technology or AI in like this business that is,
Hugely important. And the reason being, so our technology partner right now for the AI portion of the game is Wingfield. They're based out of Germany. Wingfield primarily used to do tennis, and they saw an opportunity in pickleball to, there's not a clear-cut leader when it comes to AI in this space. A lot of people are trying to do it. It's very difficult to do, but these guys have a track record when it comes to tennis, and so they are a hardware that sits at the facilities that provides a lot of data points, and we're helping them build that out. And the reason why it's so important, the three pillars at the Picklr that we talk about and we incorporate into everything we do is connect, dink, and compete. The connect part, the community-based, the human interactions that happen on a daily basis. Because of pickleball, there's a reason why so many people want to play, because it's so community focused. Number two, dink. Pickleball is meant to be fun. Dink is a pickleball term where you're playing at the kitchen. You're trying to get to the kitchen with the people you're playing with. But ultimately, dinking around, you should be having a good time. But then the competition side, right? Pickleball brings out competition out of people. I mean, and hopefully you guys didn't see this, but it trended everywhere last week, where a match got so heated, the guy slapped a paddle out of someone's hand and went to go pick it up, and he got kicked in the face. And I was like, that's the wrong competition we want to see. It was on TMZ, it was on Barstool. Like, I couldn't believe how it was trending everywhere. But where I'm going with this is that people are so passionate about wanting to get better at their game, right? I told you the sports I grew up playing. I don't sit at the 3-point line or the free throw line or do dribbling drills to get better at basketball at this age. But in pickleball, I'm willing to put in the time and effort to get a little bit better. And so to have a technology partner in AI that gives me the ability to review film, to understand where my miss shots are happening, from my volleys to my serves to my third drops to, I mean, you name it. This machine's going to be able to feed you a lot of information. So it's important just because people want to get better at this game, and it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, because again, you don't see grown people, practicing their 40 or, doing tackling drills. But in pickleball, you're willing to invest the time to get better, and it's one of the most unique things I've ever seen.
So is there some social element when you beat your friends, you feel is there some element of competitive nature in that way?
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the beauty of it, right? Because And I love to ask people this question: when was the last time you felt butterflies because you were going to compete, right? And for people, it's like, oh, it's been a while, right? To feel the butterflies when you're going to compete, even if it's just a local tournament, and you know that you have to bring your A game because you're playing against your friends or you're playing against, people that have beat you, and you put in the work. It's one of the most fun experiences to feel the butterflies as an adult, right? Like I help coach my daughter's soccer teams. I got four daughters in soccer, and I coach two of them, and I feel butterflies just competing. And as a coach, and I'm like, man, I imagine them as a player being nervous for a big game, and it's so nice to just feel, that competitive feeling every once in a while. And the fact that pickleball can bring those three elements of connecting and compete out of a human being, it's one of the most special things I've ever seen.
So we often talk about this triangle that every company or in every franchisor has to meet, like the investors, the customers, and then your employees. So with Picklr, I guess, how do you make the package, cost effective for consumers, make it fun for them, make them want to come back, and then make the franchise profitable for franchisees, which obviously a lot of people want to become your franchisee, and then also build a long-term sustainable company.
Well, and I think one of the things with being a franchisor, and one of the things that we continue to remind not only employees, but we got to have a belief that, again, if it's not successful for a franchisee, then it doesn't work for the franchisor. If they fail, we fail, right? And so we invest heavily into making sure that we understand how do we get to profitability through the right processes and working hand in hand with our franchisees, right? I think early on, and I hear this all the time, that HQ and franchisees can sometimes butt heads, right? And that's the last thing we want. We have a dynamic here at the Picklr, even with our employees, that we're trying to build an all-star team, and we're trying to do right by our franchisees, because that's what keeps us up at night. We got people that invested into our brand, that have invested into the mission, that invested into us as founders. And so we have to make sure that we do right by them, not only by the processes and building a brand, but also, to your point, cost, right? And so everything that we look at or think about is, how do we do things at scale? And from construction packages to technology packages to bring in partnership dollars, to making sure they have successful launches right off the bat, so they have a strong foundation of members. And so all of that stuff consumes us as a franchisor. And then from a membership experience, look, people have options nowadays when it comes to indoor facilities. Just like Anytime Fitness, why would anyone be willing to pay $300 at Lifetime versus $25 at Planet Fitness, right? And it's all going to be about the membership experience, right? When you walk into a Picklr, we like to say that we are the Equinox of pickleball. When you feel it as soon as you walk in the door, right? How beautiful the pro shop is, how beautiful our facility is, from the bathrooms to the tile to the sound baffling, to how well the courts are done, to the spacing, to the TVs that are advertising. I mean, you name it, every detail that we've thought of is for membership experience. And then on top of that, how do we make sure that we're providing the best pickleball experience, right? So we have a whole team that's dedicated to programming. We got people that are building out certification processes for our trainers, so that we know that if someone is taking a clinic or a lesson at the Picklr, that they are getting the best lesson that they've ever received, right? Same with our kids academies and our junior academies. Same with our competitive events, from tournaments to just your weekly, king of the court. There's a lot of stuff that we are trying to create so that the experiences, man, that was a lot of fun. I loved coming to the Picklr. I want to continue to come back. And so we also invest very heavily in making sure that our members they can get the most out of their their experience with the Picklr.
Yeah, and we had to ask this one about Drew Brees, but how did you connect with him and how did you guys structure the partnership?
Drew
Wow.
You know what? Drew grew up playing tennis, and just like a lot of us that fell in love with pickleball during the pandemic, he was one of those, right? So he put a sports court in the back and started playing with his kids, and he invested in a pickleball team just like we did early on. And so Drew is a competitor. He loves pickleball. He started to get into this space. The beautiful thing about Drew is that people don't realize how extensive his knowledge is on franchisees. I think we're his 6th or 7th concept that he's invested in, and he's very smart because he knows he has a brand, he knows he has experience, and so he leverages that, right? And he came to us, a gentleman named Aaron Scholl, shout out to Aaron. He loved pickleball, and he was actually Drew Brees' equipment manager during his Purdue days, and knew that Drew loved pickleball, knew that Drew was very passionate about franchising. And this gentleman also is a CTO for another franchising concept and pitched Drew on it. Drew originally said no, and said, not a problem, Drew. We'll circle back when you think we're ready. Say in the meantime, all the territories you're interested in, we're going to sell because we have people that are interested in it. And he came back a week later. He's like, I'm back in. We figured out an ambassador deal. He is opening up his first location in January, and owns Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. So 30 locations. So Drew has a very passionate and very experienced operations team that he plugs in, and then he has the right partners along the way to get these facilities up and going. So I think in Indiana, where he played college at Purdue, he'll have 2 facilities open before January. So he's been an awesome partner. He brings a lot of value because he's not just your classic ambassador that's just a big name. He comes with a lot of experience, and we bounce ideas on. We actually asked him to be on our board, but he's very busy, and Drew, if you know anything about him, wants to do everything 110%, and wasn't able to do that right now. But that's how much we value Drew, is we even asked him to be on our board. But yeah, Drew's awesome.
Yeah. I was wondering, do you know what changed in that week from the no to yes?
Hey, all the stuff you want is going to be gone. So it's scarcity, right? But the thing is, we weren't kidding. That's how much interest we had in those states, right? And so I think he must have realized that, again, we were, for us to sell the 400 locations plus in 18 months. We have people that are bought in. We haven't used a broker once. This is all done in-house. And then number 2, we don't spend money on marketing when it comes to inbound leads. And we get around 250 leads every single month right now. Still, to this date.
So how many territories are you planning to sell in the US?
We're gonna close it out around 750. So you can see we're pretty much sold out. I think by the end of the year we'll be at 500, and so that's the other reason why we don't want to saturate the United States with Picklrs on every corner, right? We want people to have very healthy, very a nice moat around their territories of 200,000 people or more, with certain income categories, right? And so we want everyone to be able to have the ability to have success in their territory. So we think by next year, we could be sold out of territory. So I think there's a lot of people that realize that, and they want to make sure they get in.
Yeah, like a happy, sad moment to be sold out.
yeah, but then we go international, right? Our goal is to do probably three international deals, probably primarily focusing on the UK, Spain, and then we're trying to figure out, is it Mexico? I'm starting to see facilities pop up in Mexico left and right, which is kind of cool. Dubai is another one that I think could handle. And so we're just, my goal this year is just continue to keep my ear to the ground of what's happening international, and we have to get in at the right time, just like we did here in the U.S. Because again, we're not the only ones. When we went to Canada and announced it, there was already someone that beat us to being the franchisor out there. But luckily we've been doing this for 3.5 years, and as a franchisor, about 1.5 years. And so we believe with our experience, with our operations, with our brand, we can come in and replicate this in other countries.
So that's amazing to hear. Like usually a lot of franchisors, they see the US growth and international growth like it's being very separate and fragmented. So like the international growth is left for later. Obviously you guys have this competitive pressure, but how do you have the confidence that pickleball is rising around the world?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we have a lot of partners that have access to data in regards to, in every country right now, they have a governing body of pickleball, right? And so they understand what is happening within their own countries. And so we partner with those governing bodies throughout the other countries, and we're able to determine and they keep track of the growth. Now, great point. Our goal is solely focused as a franchisor to make sure that we are keeping track and focus domestically. That's why we partner with the right master franchisee, because they are going to be the extension of us. We'll continue to support them and train them and help them open locations for a short period of time until they feel confident. So yes, HQ will provide those resources, but that's why we're also very picky when it comes to who's going to be the master, because having franchisee experience and capital, we believe that we are sophisticated enough that we can help them replicate that in other countries with our experience. And so we have to find the right partners, because it can't just be anyone that loves pickleball and can write a check. They also have to have the experience to scale.
At however many millions of people are underserved in terms of pickleball courts. So obviously the interest is higher than the number of facilities available. But how do you make sure you build a durable business in the space, and that when the supply and demand maybe meet each other one day, and that pickleball is not another fad?
Yeah, and that's the $1 million question, right? If I had a telescope to look into the future and see, is this pickleball thing a fad? Look, I'm very bullish on pickleball because again, there's been stuff like racquetball and tennis. These are sports that have been around for a very long time. Racquetball, had a massive growth, and it tapered down and actually started declining. And tennis as well. Tennis is having its moment again because they feel the pressure of pickleball. But the reason why I'm so bullish is for the same reasons we have our 3 pillars, right? Pickleball is so sticky. I see people that have been members for 3.5 years, and I'm just I've never paid for a membership for anything that long. Maybe Amazon. Amazon is pretty sticky. It's hard to get rid of Amazon, but I think people feel a pressure of, if you cancel your membership, you're essentially quitting on friends and community. That's really how it feels at times, right? And so it's from that standpoint, it's pickleball is very sticky. But then again, there will be a market correction when in this space in pickleball, whether it be paddles or balls. Look up the number of paddle companies out there that start every year. They're in the thousands, right? It's crazy to think that a sport can support that many paddles. When you think about indoor facilities, they are popping up by the hundreds every month, all over the country, right? Whether it be a small mom and pop, to other franchisors, which, I think we're pretty confident that we've built the foundation to be around a long time, because we've invested in that infrastructure. And so it will suck for this space, because it will suck to see people fail and have to close doors. But that's naturally what happens in fast growing spaces, right? We saw it with the internet bubble, and we've seen it with the .com bubble. Like there's a lot of stuff where things that there has to be a market correction, and we hope that in the meantime people or pickleball will be hurt for a little, but I think it'll come out unscathed because of just the love that people have for the sport.
Competition, so there are like eight pickleball franchises overall, and then there are a lot of like just local facilities. So when you guys choose like your location, I guess like how do you position it amongst just like local mom and pop, like
we take all of that into consideration, right? Not only just like population density and income, but we're able to with Google Analytics and Meta, we're able to determine what the pickleball interest is. We look at what we think, what population size can support what size of facility, right? Because we're pretty open to doing a 6-court facility up to a 12-court facility, right? Depending on what the market can hold. At HQ, we have a 15-court facility and with 32,000 people. That was a mistake, but we did it, we did it strategically because also what's very dependent on how big it can go is your rent rate, right? The rent rate is going to be probably the most important factor in your lease to make this thing work, right? Luckily, our landlord is one of the founders and a really good buddy that gave us a very generous rent rate. And so we were able to build that, right? And so we invested very heavily into in-house real estate team. We help negotiate and underwrite every single lease that we sign. And so when it comes to real estate, we also understood that this was going to be a real estate war, right? Because everyone wants to eat up. And luckily, the qualifications are getting tighter and tighter for commercial real estate because not everyone used to raise their hand to take on 32,000 square feet. But you'll see a report, I think ICSC, they're the largest real estate show in the United States, is going to release a report. I think it's either them or JLL, showing who ate up the most real estate in 2024. And I think we're going to be at 1 or 2 as far as commercial real estate.
Wow.
So, yep. So I think you'll see mom and pops and other franchisors. Everyone is saying, "Oh, we've sold 400 locations," or 5. Those are a lot of area developer deals, and you'll see that with area developers, they now have to support the local franchisee and build the infrastructure, right? And then how much more difficult is it to sign leases? And so you'll start to see real quickly who's actually signing leases and who's opening. And you can see we're the only ones in the double digits when it comes to our competition, as far as how many locations are open. And start paying attention even more because start January, it's like 1 a week, 2 a week. This is going to continue to go faster and faster, right? So you'll start to see the differences when it comes to what kind of franchisor we want to become and what we've been working towards.
Many people are excited about area developer deals, but you don't seem to be in that camp.
No.
So do you mind explaining a little why?
Yeah, I think for us, like we understand the work that has to happen from an area developer standpoint, right? So let's just say that we determine there's 32 locations in all of Texas. Then that person has to turn around and go and sell them. They have to create a support system as far as help them with local marketing and national marketing to operations and supplying, franchise business consultant and what we call go teams, helping open locations and making sure that they're doing right. And you start to do that at every state. So now you have area developers on top of franchisees, and that's what we invested. We get told all the time that we have a pretty big team, 70 plus people for where we're at in the stage. It's a pretty hefty team, but we are at the point right now where we have enough Go teams that we can open 4 locations at any given time, right? We are hiring as we go with a franchise business consultant. And again, and the reason why we do all this is because it has to work for the franchisee. Like there, in this space, there is no wiggle room for anyone to have things fail, because it's a new concept, it's a new business. Indoor pickleball didn't exist 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right? And then from a franchisor standpoint, 2 years ago, nobody existed from a franchisor standpoint. So we're still building the category. And so for us, it's very important to do it right, and do it right the first time, and make sure that at headquarters, we are providing the most support that we possibly can to these franchisees.
So who's the best pickleball player in the world, like male or female? But you can't, no hedging, just give us the name.
Best, well, there has to be 2 categories. It has to be best men and
best
women's.
men.
Yeah. Annalie Waters, it's going to be a long time before anyone catches Annalie. I mean, she's 17. The amount of triple crowns from singles to mixed to women's. I mean, the amount of titles she's already won. This girl, I mean, she's amazing. It's literally watching a video game character when you watch her play. I do love that the gap has narrowed on the women's side, because she was so dominant for such a long time. And even on the singles side, it's starting to close a little bit. But on the mixed side, Ben Johns is her partner. Ben Johns is awesome. What he's done for the sport, he's killed it, and he's the GOAT. But I'm bullish on Big H, Hayden Patrick-Quinn, 18-year-old punk kid that likes to talk smack, very swaggy, wears a gold chain and sunglasses out there on the court. This kid is I think he's the future of pickleball, even though Ben Johns is only like 24. So I think you're going to start seeing this game start to change. It's going to get faster. It's going to get younger. It's going to get more athletic. And we're in for a wild ride in regards to what pro pickleball looks like as well. So it'll be fun.
Thank you so much, George. This was amazing.